The InterSense equipment designed to work with the IS900 works on a series of either wireless or wired transmitters. Now those transmitters can be used to either track, for example, your hand, or the point of view of your head. These battery packs work as wireless transmitters which relay information to the RF units. So the way this works is, let's say I wanted to track my hand in physical space. I could then connect a hand tracker to one of these RF transmitters and then connect the RF receiver directly to the InterSense unit itself through one of the ports in the back. Now the InterSense unit can track independent systems that are plugged into each individual port. The rails are plugged into port number 8, and so that's always left plugged in order to receive transmissions to and from the units. However, we have port number 1 designated and hardwired into the head tracker on the back of our optical display. Any of the other ports can be used simply by plugging in either a wired or wireless transmitter into any of the other ports. Make sure never to plug or unplug any of the units while the unit is powered on. So essentially, if you're going to be using DART, to fire up this system, you want to start by turning on the computer, but you're going to be using the Windows partition of the Mac Pro. So when you start up, you push the power button and you hold the Alt Option key on the keyboard. When you do that, it'll allow you to choose between the Mac and the Windows partitions on the hard drive. The problem is that because of the way the video pass-through works on the optical display, if this monitor doesn't show you the choice between the two drives, turn it on, and from within the head-mounted display, the choice of the two drives will appear in the right eye. From there, you can choose the Windows partition and click Return. Once you've done that, the system should start up, and it'll recognize the monitor as the primary monitor, as it should. Most of the time, you shouldn't have to choose between the two drives. It should just start up in Windows. It's only when it starts up in Mac do you need to restart and hold down the Option key. So let's say we wanted to start any project that uses just the head tracker in DART, running it full screen. You've got the head-mounted display with a head tracker already mounted, and it's hardwired directly to the IS900. And this should always remain plugged in, or at least for as long as you're going to be using the optical display. So what you have is the head tracker plugged into an adapter, which plugs into one of the serial cables that plugs into port 1 of the IS900. So after you've powered on the computer and booted up in Windows, if your head-mounted display isn't turned on yet, you should turn that on. And then, once everything's plugged in, remember, never hot swap or unplug anything once the trackers are on. But once everything's plugged in, you can turn on the InterSense trackers. Now the InterSense tracking grid will show you its startup progress and takes about 2 minutes to start. Once it goes through its startup procedures, the blue LEDs on all the rails will blink. All of the red lights will light up, and then it'll narrow it down to the ports that it happens to be using. It'll report the status of each tracker, and it will tell you either that it's got a strong signal, a weak signal, or that it doesn't recognize the tracker. In this case, port 8 is occupied because that's where the rails are plugged in. You'll notice here the display says 1L and is flickering in low digit numbers, usually between 0 and 5, which means it has a low signal quality. To put on the head-mounted display, simply open the adjusters all the way, place it on your head, adjust the top so that it sits level to your eyes, and then adjust the back so it fits snugly on your head. You can then adjust the headphones so that you can hear the sound properly. Everything that you see on the screen, you'll be able to see within the head-mounted display. In this case, it's a sphere placed in the room right above the keyboard. Now let's say I wanted to use a Dart project that had a hand tracker as well as a head tracker. In this case, I'm going to use one of the wireless receivers. I'm going to make sure my unit's powered down first, and then I'm going to plug the RF receiver into the next available port. As you can see, I already have a head tracker plugged into port 1, so this one will be plugged into port 2. So plugging in a hand tracker, I want to ensure that the wireless transmitter that I have corresponds to the wireless receiver. Both of these are unit number 1. I can then plug in, while powered off of course, the hand tracker that I want to use. Then turn the power on. You should see a green power light. You won't see the in-range signal yet until you fire on the InterSense tracker. And you should also not have the low battery light. I can then put on the hand tracker and clip the wireless receiver to my belt or pants. Now this particular application lets me see a cube that's being tracked to the hand tracker. When the cube attached to the hand tracker interacts with the cubes positioned in space, it triggers an audio cast file.